Hey y'all, it's your girl Sierra, aka Little Bit, and you are tuning in on another episode of the greatest podcast of the year, Little Bit of Therapy. If you are new here, please do not forget to go ahead and hit that subscribe button, like, comment, and share, because this is not the type of therapy that you want to miss, okay? Let's get straight into it. Today's episode, we are going to be talking about friendship. And so I had to bring my best friend of 15 years to discuss these things with me, so I'll allow her to introduce herself.
Well, some of y'all already know me, some of y'all know. My name is Taylor Janelle. I am Sierra's best friend of 15 years, as she mentioned. I reside in Georgia. And yeah, we're here to talk about friendship and healing and love. And make sure y'all tune in, like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff.
All right, yes. So just as mentioned before, we are going to be talking about friendship. So there are some different questions that she and I are going to process together when it comes to our personal relationship. And then we're going to overall just generalize that and help you guys understand the difference between a healthy and unhealthy relationship, how your past and your trauma can impact your relationship with people in general, and just, overall how to navigate through difficulties, especially when you are enduring a friendship that has been going on for quite some time. So grab what you need, prepare to release, because it's going to go all the way up with a little bit of therapy. Let's heal it. Alright y'all, let's get straight into it. Y'all already know I got my notes today. I got it in my ISU portfolio, shout out. And of course, I'm always gonna speak the word. So I got my Bible. Like I be telling y'all, do not be talking about my Bible. Okay? For real. Alright, so let's get straight into it. How are you feeling today, Taylor?
Hi, I'm melting like a popsicle last year, y'all. But other than that, I'm good. I'm in good spirits, and I'm always happy to be here with her. So
yes, we in the A with it. So yes, it's definitely humid out here. Very, very hot.
So if you start seeing my hair in some spreads,
listen, I got mine picked up. You hear me? Because But all right, let's get the people what they want. Okay, so as mentioned, we have came up with some questions. It's just about 4 questions, and then we'll be, elaborating from there. And so the first question is, was there ever a point where you thought that this friendship wouldn't last much longer?
Which is so funny because I came up with that question. So honestly, yes. Because there was a point in our friendship. Obviously we were still, younger to come to our own, but I feel like me and Sierra were doing like this. And we had separate friend groups, and I feel like we were interested in different things, and I felt like we were kind of drifting. She had just started college and, was living her life. I ended up becoming a young mom. So, and then I lived out here. I moved out here when I was 18. So, and there was a point, the early part of our 20s where I was like, I don't know if we're going to be friends much longer. Like, I started having thoughts that, everybody that you're friends with, you're not supposed to be friends with for forever. So that was like a thought that crossed my mind before. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I can definitely piggyback on that, and definitely say in our early 20s, it was just like a lot of us really figuring out ourselves and what we want out of life, and just like where we are going. And I think just based on circumstantial aspects that had definitely caused a drift. Me being away in college, me trying to pretty much just start all over and emerge into a whole different world. Being in college and being back at home is two different worlds, for real. And so with you being a young mom, I definitely feel that had a role to play into everything. I can definitely say that when it came to questioning if we were going to be friends and things of that nature, it definitely crossed my mind a lot, just because of not even just the distance within proximity, but just you said, the distance as far as just interest and what we are involved in. Mm-hmm. And then with me being in college, I was involved in a whole bunch of stuff, and I didn't have time, and I didn't know how to prioritize that time. And so it looked at a bad look because I was with my friends, but they were in college with me. We were literally 5 minutes away. I walked to one dorm, they in another dorm, and things of that nature. And just we talked about, I didn't have my license. I didn't get my license until 23, 24. I didn't have a car. I didn't have to work. My parents took care of me and like refund checks. So when it came to, you know, traveling and things of that nature, I just didn't have the money for it. And then like being a broke college student, if you know, you know, it's very, very difficult to travel. And I think because we were so busy, like focused on like our wants and needs, we forgot how being so focused on ourselves, it can interfere with us being able to pour into one another. Absolutely. Something else was because I used to question if the friendship would last any much like longer. It was definitely an aspect with unforgiveness, and like we had touched like base on that. I'm just now beginning to like fully forgive you from everything. Like honestly, from the last few months of last year going into like this year, and because I did not fully like forgive you, when like you think about everything that has like happened in like the friendship, and when it was just like certain parts to where it's just like, okay, it just seemed like the same thing. It just seems like the same thing over and over. It was just really hard for me to differentiate you from like the action. So whenever time it came to like certain instances in which it was time for us to like communicate, just as we talked about before, I was defensive because I was basing you as the offense that you have done upon like to me. And so that would make me more like distant, because it was just like that maladaptive assumption, okay, like I already know how she is, we done had conversations like this before, it's always me, I'm always the bad friend, I'm the one that's always like the problem. So since I'm those things, let me go ahead and do you a favor and separate myself. And I can definitely say like that unforgiveness, it definitely separated us for sure, because as I was pulling away, she was pushing like closer towards me. And when you don't communicate, people like that is going to be like, okay, well, let me try to reach out and reach out and reach out. And the more that they're reaching out, it's irritating you, but that person don't know that. And so eventually it's just like, okay, did I do, you know, something wrong? So then it will then, you know, bleed. Well, I wouldn't necessarily like bleed, but it will like roll off to her. Be like, okay, well, she's gonna be distant and I'm gonna be distant too. Like, she's not gonna try, I'm not gonna try like either. And I think that's where we go wrong in friendships, to where we are still like holding on to like offenses. And then in like the Bible in Proverbs verse 17:9, it pretty much just talks about, you know, love and like friendship, and it says that, you know, dwelling on offenses will definitely like separate close friends. But I do want to read that like verbatim, so then that way they know exactly what I'm referring to. So that is Proverbs chapter 17 verse 9, and it says, love prospers when a fault is forgiven. Love prospers when a fault is forgiven, but dwelling on it separates close friends. And me dwelling on it, it definitely separated us, because I didn't want anything to do with her pretty much at all, because I was just dwelling on like that hurt and things like that. It's not okay, especially if you have conversations and you deem or like demonstrate yourself as like, okay, like I'm fine, but you still holding things over people's head. You still holding record of like wrongdoings, and that's not what love is. And you can also find that in the Bible. And so that is definitely something that I felt like I struggled with in our friendship.
Absolutely. And I think like I struggle with the same, but I just handle it differently, because I'm a person that I don't like to be into it with people that I'm close to. So I'll try I can't until I can't no more. And it got to a point where it's like I'm walking on eggshells in this friendship. So it got to a point for me where it's like, if it fall off, it fall off. Like I'm close to who I'm close to, she close to who she close to. When we talk, like we don't. Like it got to a point where I was like, I'm not gonna keep trying, because like I felt like just like it was hurt on her end, it was hurt on my end too. And I feel like that wasn't being understood. So it did get to a point, like I am a person that will keep trying with somebody, and then once I like release my hands off of it, like I just release my hands off of it, and I probably didn't do it properly like I should, because I'm also an emotional unloader, which is probably what she's talking about. Like I hold on and stuff, and then when it come out, it's just like word on it. Like you're gonna get the paragraphs, you're gonna get the textbooks, you're gonna get the long audios, because I definitely harbor things in until I can't anymore. So I definitely understood what she meant by like she didn't feel like she wanted anything to do with me, and I kept trying to be like, okay, well, what's the problem? But then I also got to a place in myself, where I'm just like, I'm not gonna keep like chasing after her, or like chasing after a friendship. Like I know who I am, I know what type of friend like I've been, and things like that. And if I'm trying to fix it and the person is not, like I can't get to do that. So we definitely were doing this a lot. But I think the love and like the growth is what brought us back together as well. So she's 100% accurate on that. We did hit like a very, very like one part where it's just like, okay, this friendship is what it is. We're gonna hit the peak of where it's going to hit, but that's because we also were not realizing that we were still young. I mean, we still are young. We were younger, and we weren't giving each other the grace to like grow. We still had so much more growing to do. We were, like she said, learning ourselves, coming into our own, you know, from our different backgrounds and things like that. So we didn't factor that in because you don't know to factor that in at the time. So she's absolutely correct. We were at a point where we were just like, do you? I do me. We talk, but we don't. Like that's how we went about it for like quite a while.
Yeah, absolutely. And communication is very important in friendships, but well, actually relationships in general. Like communication, I feel like it's all about having like interpersonal. I'm cracking up. Why did you look at me like that?
Because I'm like, yeah, it is.
Yeah, so communication is a part of interpersonal effectiveness, but also, you know, a part of communication is comprehension and understanding. And she and I, that is where we also, you know, bumped heads because we were listening to respond and not listening to understand. We were listening to be right rather than listening to. It's like, yeah, we're trying to save the friendship, but are we really trying to save it? And we keep, well, you did this, you did that. It comes off from like an accusatory way. It's kind of like, okay, well, you said that I did this, but what about that time when you, et cetera, et cetera. And so we got so caught up in the blame games where now we talking about things that's from like years ago. We are distracted, right? We are distracted from like what, you know, was the initial reason as to why we was having a conversation in the first place. And so that is why it's important for conversations to be had. Now, I understand that people like space because I also need space to, you know, process. It's okay to take, you know, time away, but you can't keep harboring, you know, things in and letting it build because then when you let it out, it's kind of like word vomit. And so to the other person, based on my personal experience, I just feel like, well, dang, this how you been feeling this whole time? I feel like I can't do nothing right. Why didn't you say anything at the, you know, beginning? So we had to also like work on ourselves when it comes to our communication and really process our underlying fear when it comes to communicating, because sometimes I feel like that can get in the way because it's just like, okay, well, remember the last time I communicated, I was invalidated. Remember the last time we communicated, and then it ended up being, you know, this huge, you know, argument and things of that nature. And so I think it's important for us to work on our fears when it comes to communicating, and then, you know, also going into conversations not expecting the outcome to work in our like favor, but more so going into the conversation with a open mind and just as quick as we are to say, well, you did this, you did that, being able to receive that take on the other end. Yeah, absolutely. So the next question is, you know, as we are growing each day, what is something you want me to remember when in doubt? So, since I just got done processing, I feel like I said a lot, so you can go ahead and process that, and I'll just, you know, piggyback.
So we have had these conversations before, but since we're sharing, one thing that we both have agreed on is that we always want to lead with love and understand that when one another is coming to each other with something, it's not to harm you, it's not to make you feel bad, it's not to like throw you under the bus. Like, we gotta let those guards down, because it's not about that, because she knows me and I know her, and it's never coming from a bad place. Maybe sometimes the wording could be wrong, and you could always apologize and correct that. But if you're going into a situation with defenses, you're not gonna hear like you know, take from it like what you need to. So what I want her to always know is that like I always got her back, you know, and you know, not and no matter what the situation was, because there were certain situations where she felt like I could have been a better friend, or I could have had her back a little bit more, and that was just dealing with mutuals and people that we already knew and things like that. But now she understands that our friendship is our friendship, her friendship with others is others, and my friendship with others is others, and only we, you know, dictate what happens like in this friendship. She knows that I have her back, she has mine, and we know that we're never going to tell each other something where it's going to harm us or where it's going to be incorrect. You just have to know that the person that you are dealing with, like, it's not a thing of malice. And so I want her to know that even in the times that maybe the communication is not always correct, because we are flawed individuals, we're gonna make mistakes even as grown healing people. But I want her to know, okay, that didn't come out right, you know, from Taylor, but I know what she meant. I'm still gonna address like how she said it, but I know like the place that it's coming from. And I just want her like to always know that it's always gonna be like nothing like but love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I received that. I definitely received that. And so I feel like another thing when it comes to that is, you know, even though like we both like have like faults, one of the things is just still reflecting on me, those instances in which I was still, you know, holding on to that unforgiveness. So I'm like, oh well, what you trying to say? You know?
Yeah.
So I do agree with everything that like you have said, and you know, I feel the same way. Like I want you to know that my intentions are always like pure, no bad like intent, like whatsoever. And then one of the main things is that because we have known each other for quite some time, it's important to know that we are constantly changing. So who we were when we met when we were 15 is not the same. Who we were when we were 18 is not the same. Who we were when we were 21 is not the same. 25 is not the same, right? We are constantly like changing. So always know that, you know, even when I change, like my heart posture will continue to, you know, remain the same. And I am always like leading out of love. And I know it be instances in which I'm not always active and things of that nature, but you know, with me going on like my spiritual journey and things of that nature, there are things that's going on in my life that I can't really explain to people right now because I don't even know, you know, what's going on. So even like when in doubt, when it seems like, okay, Sierra don't seem like herself today, just, you know, just still show me grace, have like you always been, you know, like showing, and just like understand that everything that I'm doing is not just for me, it's for everyone. You know, it's so I can be who God created me to be, so I can be a better person to like other people, because I do, you know, value our friendship. I value it, you know, a lot and things of that nature. And so I just always want you to know, once you begin to like, you know, get in doubt, just remember the things that like we talked about, and know that if you ever need some reassurance, you know, always come to me like for that reassurance, so in that way I can have that opportunity to like reassure you and to correct myself. For instances in which I may have like went wrong and didn't even like recognize that. So,
and likewise, she can come to me as well if there's the extra reassuring advice that she needs. Like, I'll give it to you like gladly.
Yes, and I feel like not to take up too much time, but I feel like reassurance is very, very important, because without reassurance, us being like, you know, humans and how our cognition, you know, works. We will go ahead and gather whatever like we can to come up with our own perception of how we think of other people in the world and like the situations of what's, you know, going on. Nonetheless, I do feel like our actions can contribute to a certain like assumption, but sometimes we can engage in like mind reading, which is like a, you know, cognitive distortion. We like jump to conclusions, and if we are constantly viewing things from the past, we're like, oh yeah, this is just like that, you know, last time, or I already know, or they should know. And then it's just like sometimes we won't know, you know. Common sense ain't always, you know, common, and you know, not all snowflakes are the same. So just like, you know, there may be some similarities, but it'll always be like a difference. So the way we went about one situation, we may go about the next situation differently. And so to circle that back to, you know, reassurance, I just really, really feel like we have to have those difficult conversations.
Absolutely.
We definitely have to have those difficult conversations, because without those difficult conversations, we're going to have conclusions. And then conclusions don't bring, you know, clarity. They just continue to, you know, separate us. And now we treating each other and viewing one another based on that cognitive fight that we had in our head, but none of those situations has like ever like happened. And so that reassurance is very, very important. Yeah. Is there anything that you want to add on to that before I move on to the next question?
No, you can wrap that up.
Okay. All right. So the next one is, how can our trauma and or our past impact our relationships? I feel like, because I literally just got done.
Oh, you
okay. So
one thing me and Sierra talking about, like, in friendships is I didn't realize like that sometimes the way that I have to handle or that I deal with situations with my family, I deal with it the same way. Like with my friends, like I ain't gonna die too much into that. But I feel like, which we briefly touched on, like I feel like when I'm not being heard or when I feel like I'm being dismissed, it's like a trigger for me, and it's gonna be one or two things. Like I'm either going to emotionally unload, and it's gonna come off in a way like I'm attacking you, or like it's deeper than what it is, or I'm just gonna like shut down completely and I have nothing like to do with it. But I'm mostly on the side of I'm gonna emotionally unload, and again, you're gonna get those text messages, you're gonna get those paragraphs, you're gonna get that storybook, because I feel like I've been holding it in like so long, and where I get holding things in for so long is because the type of family I come from, I wasn't always allowed to like speak my mind, or, like voice my opinion until like much later in life, and then when I finally did, I was just like, I'm growing up, like probably not in a healthy way, and sometimes that still happens, families are just complicated. But I was handling my friendships like the same way, and I had to understand that everybody does not communicate the same, everybody's not the same person, and you really have to pick up on what works for one person and what doesn't for the other. So that type of trauma, that type of baggage, like, I didn't carry on into my friendships, and like once I got to that point, they would give me the same way like I was giving it to my family. Like that wasn't like okay, because I do consider myself to be closer to my friends. They are my family as well. So I don't like really going there like with them, but I realize I was treating them the same. So you have to know the difference and like what works for some people and what don't, because then you're expecting a different result and it's not going to be like what you think it's going to be. So it's very important, to make sure that you're being respectful, also mindful of like how other people process things as well. You can't just unleash on them like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Just like you had said earlier, I used to tell you used to do that. Are you trying to be a therapist to me?
Yeah, like when we was younger, I felt like she didn't know how to separate the two, and that's the more trauma because like my family had it like really bad, like trying to talk down and talk at me instead of to me. So when we had like what I felt like was a real friend moment, and she started with the therapy stuff, and it's like I got a therapist, I'm not paying you, I need you to be my friend right now. I'm not. That's not what I'm saying. Like I felt like at the time I took that more personally than I should have, because like she was just trying to like be my friend and stuff like that. It might have had some of the things that she learned, but that was things that I needed to hear that I was not trying to receive at the time, because it's like I already take it from one side. You're not gonna talk down or like you know more than me or talk at me, either you're gonna talk to me like an actual person and we're gonna talk like friends. But she was talking to me like a friend at times. At that moment, I felt like at times that I wasn't receiving that way just because of baggage and trauma. So and now when she do it, I be like, yes, tell me more, because I need to hear this. But like at the time, I was like, no, don't treat me like one of like your clients or one of your therapists. Like we're friends. I mean, one of your clients. Like we're friends. And that wouldn't always fare off well either. So I definitely had to differentiate like some things for sure. But she did tell me that for sure.
Yeah, and to piggyback off that. When I came off and said things like that, it never was like, okay, I learned this in class, this is what it is. When I was in a position to where I'm like, I really feel like Taylor is projecting, because some of the things that you would say, it's just like, I will always have to defend myself, y'all always, and I'm like, Taylor, whatever you got going on with you and your family, I feel like you were projecting that. So I do want to clear the air, because I don't want no one thinking that well, have you ever thought about, everything?
Yeah.
I feel like because I am a therapist, I feel like that can also cause conflict in relationships as well, especially if someone not able to receive it. And then now, because that's just like who I am, I don't ever come off a way of trying to be a therapist. I feel like because I am a therapist, the things that I'm saying, and I'm going to give a person some very, very insightful advice. I'm not just going to be like, oh, dang, sad story. Like I'm really, really, really going to speak life and speak purpose into my friends and family life, and something that I feel like they need to like hear. So I don't ever want anyone to think that I'm trying to be like a therapist. Everything that I do and say, that's just literally like me. And like how I am, and then because I am a therapist, and then people view it that way, I feel like that's you, and that's not me. But if I ever came off that way, I apologize. But y'all don't want y'all thinking, so how does that make?
No,
I don't do stuff like that. I'm
No,
like, I feel like you're projecting because
it wasn't like
you're going
that.
through certain
It
things.
was certain things that she would trigger that would make me feel like, you know, it was like similar situations. And then when we have a conversation about it and she start, I'm like, no, like I don't even want to hear it because you doing the same stuff. Like it would how I felt at the time be certain things where I'm like, okay, this is how it's similar. But no, she wasn't just like, well, lay on my couch and let me diagnose you. It wasn't like that. It would be the same type of advice that she would give now, or that how we would talk now. But when you're younger, you don't receive it that way. So that's what was going on. She wasn't doing it. She wasn't doing it.
Yeah, I'm like, let's get this. I don't want nobody thinking like that ain't ever.
And I just think in general, people be a little bit more sensitive about their families. So when there's a lot of things going on, and then you feel like somebody bring it up, and you're like, you're not gonna bring my personal family situation. It was more so that, like, it was more so that it wasn't. She's like, let me diagnose you today. Like, it wasn't that.
Yeah. I'm not on duty. I'm not on duty. All right. But yeah, so I guess it's my turn to answer the question. I feel like trauma can impact a friendship if you are literally basing your past as a way to perceive the here and now. And one of the things that we had talked about was like unmet childhood emotional needs. And I feel like when we have that unhealed inner child, we project that onto like our friends and stuff. And then that can be shown in our like expectations. So if someone's, you know, mother or father haven't been present in their lives, and then someone, you know, has a friendship or a relationship with someone, it's kind of like they expecting that partner or that friend to come through in ways in which their parents should have. And when they don't, they begin to feel like they're being neglected and, you know, abandoned, that they're not good enough and things of that nature. And so I feel like making it personable to me, how my trauma impacted my friendships was, you know, at a young age and like getting like older, I was like bullied and stuff. I'm not gonna get into too much detail on this episode because I'm already writing like a book that's gonna reveal some stuff to where y'all gonna be like, what? I never knew that. Well, now you know. But I was definitely like bullied, and so me being bullied, that made me feel like I wasn't good enough because I never really like understood. Like I never understood like why, right? And so once I began to gain like friendships and present myself a certain way, I'm like, oh, okay, so this is what I have to do to maintain the friendships. This is what keeps me in the social life. I see this is what makes people popular. And so I turned into like a people pleaser, and I lost who I truly was, and I was becoming different versions of who I assumed people had wanted me to be. And so that people pleaser contributed to me not having really like boundaries. I was like burnt out, okay? I was that friend that everybody was going to for every single thing, to the point where I wasn't even there for myself. And so I became so burnt out to where it's just like those extreme ends, right? It's just like, okay, no boundaries to like excessive boundaries. You being passive or you finna be like aggressive. I struggle with having like that middle ground. But once I stop being a people pleaser and like, okay, it's okay, I'll make it work, I'll make it work, you need this, you need that. It's just like I began to harbor feelings in my heart of like disappointment, hurt, betrayal, and beginning to feel resentful towards people, right? And so once I became like resentful, I completely like withdrew. I'm like, I'm not doing nothing for nobody. Like it became like a coping response of overcompensation, right? To avoid that schema of being triggered, of me feeling like I'm not good enough. So it's just like, okay, they're not doing nothing for me, I'm not gonna do nothing for them, like at all, right? And so when I began to like do that, I realized how it caused like a wedge in like in my friendships, because I was just pulling back and pulling back and pulling back. And then I became, you know, so hyper independent because I wasn't trusting nobody to like come through for me. So when it was individuals who was really genuine and wanted to, you know, reciprocate the things that I wanted to pull out, I'm like, no, I'm good, because I already know what it's like to go without. I already had disappointment. I already, you know, experienced, you know, betrayal. I was allowing like past experiences of people actually, you know, letting me down. I feel like I done let all my friends down, and I feel like every single one of my friends had instances to let me down. But because I didn't know how to like process, and I didn't know God, and I wasn't in therapy during the time, I did it the best way that I could by overcompensating, which just caused me to just, you know, really hold grudges and once again see people as these walking like offenses and not doing what I had needed to do in order to communicate and differentiate between the people who was capable and not capable. But now I understand who is capable and not capable, so now I'm not having like excessive expectations, right? I'm not, expecting certain people to come through for certain things. I don't share things with certain people no more because I paid attention to patterns and things of that nature, and I recognize that, that's how they have always been, but it was me taking a brush and trying to paint them for someone who they never was, but because of my unhealed trauma, I was doing people how I wanted them to be and not accepting them for who they was. So when they didn't meet my expectation, I just felt like they was these bad people, and that's not true at all. So that is definitely how my trauma had played the role into all of my friendships, just in general. So not even just specifically to just me and Taylor, but that's just everyone who I found myself being in relationships with. Do you have anything to add on to that?
Yeah, so, and I felt because, again, we lived in two different areas. She was the burnout friend where she was, which I didn't know, but I'm also a burnout friend. So, we both burned out from other people. And then it's well, I ain't got time for you, ain't got time for me, or whatever your attitude, we wasn't watering, into each other because we was too busy, burnt out from other situations. It was just I don't have time for this. So, I think, she said, it's very important to realize and recognize what those traumas are, so that way you're not carrying that on to other relationships. Because I definitely felt that at the time. I'm okay, well, and that's where the comparisons come. It's okay, well, you got time for all these other people, but you don't have time for me. And I'm sure it was time she felt the same, but that is because we literally were doing everything for everybody. And I had to get to a point where I got serious about boundaries. Because you could do all that you could, mine is different. You could do all that you could for somebody, and then the one time you don't, they'll act like you never did anything for them at all. So that's why I was oh, okay. Well, I don't want to let this turn me into a bad person where I don't do nothing for nobody else. So let me just put boundaries about it and make it specific to the people it needs to be made to. And I still struggle with that sometimes because I naturally just have a good heart. That's something I do still struggle with. But I do take boundaries more seriously now. And she said, now we know who's capable and who's not. Who deserves that effort, who doesn't, and then it's not even a matter of getting worked up and getting mad about it because you already know how they are and who they are. And that was something that we had blinders on to the people around us. So I agree what she was saying, it trickled over onto us and it just shouldn't have been that way. So
yeah, absolutely. Something that I wanted to say, yes, as far as the comparison, when it comes to friendship, for those who are watching, and not even just friendship relationships, you gotta stop comparing, because every time you compare, just in general, so we're not even going to just trickle it down to relationships, just in general.
Yeah.
You gotta stop comparing, because if you live a life in comparison, you live in a life with a poverty mindset, because you're always looking at what you lack and what you don't have versus what you do have. Now, sometimes comparison could motivate you, and sometimes comparison can help you differentiate between, okay, I realize that this person is pouring into literally everything and everyone except me, and we done had conversations and they continue on with their pattern, versus, okay, I'm comparing, but I realize that I'm not even appreciating who this person is to me. You have to also understand that there are different types of relationships, right? And there are different categories of friends. There are, associates, friends, best friends, and sisters. And then even then, some best friends won't be able to come through for you all the time. So just because you are best friends or really close friends with someone, don't place that expectation that, okay, well, I saw you do that for them, so why can't you do that for me? Based on where that person was at, based on that time, maybe they were able to come through financially during that time. Maybe they were able to come through mentally and emotionally during that time. So view things more so as, okay, circumstantial, and not viewing it as, okay, it's me, they're excluding me out. So sometimes we do have to check our insecurities when it comes to that. And we can end up, being jealous. And I know when people say, I'm not jealous, actions speak louder than words. So when you constantly find yourself being in comparison with someone, well, you do this with them, and you do that, and you do this, and you do that, there is some type of jealousy and some type of envy there, because there is something that like you want that you don't have, and you can communicate those things, but it's all about how you communicate it. So if you coming from like an accusatory way, and I feel like that's how she and I used to communicate, using you statements rather than I statements, it's, oh, I'm not listening to anything that you said, say what you need to say so I can go ahead and respond. So you got to make sure that you are not comparing. For real, ask yourself, what will you benefit from comparing? And once you conclude certain things from that comparison, is that going to help with the confidence? Is that going to help with the circumstance? Or is that just going to make matters like worse? And so when it comes to like you and I, just as we have talked about, there are some things that I'm interested in. There's some things that I do in my life. There's a place where I'm at in my life. You may not understand. You may not be interested, but vice versa. Same thing like with you. It's okay for us to be similar, but still have differences, and still be able to connect with other people and have those bonds based on how we connect with individuals and stuff. And so it's definitely important to not compare, for sure.
And after you, like she said, if you feel like you have to do that, that's when the conversation needs to be,
yes,
had. Because sometimes there could be certain things, you might need that reassurance. There just might be a lot of things going on that you need them to be like, okay, hey, that's not what it is. Because you don't want to lean upon your own understanding. Now you moving in a way that you just came up with that, like, on your own. So definitely ask, and if you're in a friendship where you feel like you can't ask, or you gotta walk on eggshells, or you can't say, then you probably have to reevaluate that friendship, or there's a deeper conversation that needs to be had on how you guys are gonna move forward. So, and we done been there, all of that, all of the stuff we said, like
we done
been there,
done that,
all of it, like literally all of it, every single situation.
Been there, done that.
Yeah, so we not just being like, you gotta, no, like all of it.
Yes, and I know a lot of people, well, how do you work through this? How to? Like, I'll be, that question really get on my nerve as a therapist. Well, how do I? Because sometimes it's just like, how to, just do it.
Yeah.
You gotta allow yourself to just go through the motions. You gotta put yourself in a position to, exemplify like the effort. You gotta put yourself in a position to grieve whatever process come along. You gotta put yourself in a position to be vulnerable. You gotta put yourself in a position to be accepting towards those drought seasons. Be accepting towards those like ups and downs. This is not me validating abusive relationships and things of that nature. This is talking about, normal and healthy, relationships. Not everything in life is a how-to. It ain't like, okay, let's turn to chapter 1, verse 7, and like things of that nature. Like, she and I, we went through a lot of ups and downs, a lot of crying, a lot of screaming matches, a lot of separation, like seasons, a lot of us figuring ourselves out, right? And woo,
you gotta be ready to do that work. Like, you gotta be ready to do that work. Like, everybody expect relationships and friendships to be easy. It's not what you're gonna get. And if you ain't ready to do that work, don't think you. If you're not ready to do that work,
yes. And another thing, if y'all can take that man back 50 million times, y'all can forgive y'all friend because she missed your birthday dinner. Things of that nature. I feel like that'll be a whole nother episode for a whole nother day, but I feel like just us as women, the general population, like as like women, we tend to show men more grace than females. But yet at the same time, we get upset when a mother show her son more grace than the daughter. But it's just like we end up unintentionally picking up that same thing, right? But heal it. We'll talk about that another day.
We definitely will. That also goes back to knowing your friend and knowing it leads with love. And if you know that, like, if they done made other sacrifices, other dinners done, and they a real friend, I know you're not mad about one little birthday dinner. Like, your birthday is one day a year. You can celebrate all year round. So, like, being mad about somebody's birthday festivities, we did that when we was younger too. Don't get us wrong. Like, we did do that. But like now, what? No. We trying to take trips and stuff. I'll see you in a couple months. Like, if you can't do it, you can't do it. Like, we not gonna no birthdays like that.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, y'all. We got one more thing, and that's just pretty much, advice that we would give someone who is questioning a friendship, someone who is, just going through like the ups and downs in like a friendship. And, one of the things that I would just say is you have to forgive. You have to forgive, because that forgiveness is not for that other person, it's for you. Right? So understand that you can also forgive with boundaries. I am very firm when it comes to boundaries. I don't have, rigid importance like boundaries, but I absolutely do believe that you can forgive an individual, with boundaries. So if you are in a place where in a friendship to where it's just like that constant path, literally, no matter how many conversations that like you have and nothing is like changing, not even just like a little bit, you gotta pay attention to people patterns and see people and things for who they are and what they are. And in order to do that, you gotta have like that forgiveness. Now, if you still want to have like a friendship with someone, I would say, communicate. Have those difficult conversations. Put everything out, on the floor. Once again, listening to understand and not to respond. Don't be jumping to conclusions. If you have an assumption, ask for, clarity and like that reassurance and things of that nature. And going back to like those you statements, just as we are quick to point out a fault in others, we got to be just as accepting for someone to, point out a fault in us, because we are not, perfect, and we got to really, really stop focusing on who's right and who's wrong and focus on what matters the most. And it's okay. Is this friendship worth saving? How could me proving that I'm right save this friendship? And that's like a prideful thing, and that's something that I had worked on 2023, my pride, just being real, real prideful. I even put myself in a situation in which, although I know that person had like wronged me or whatever, I didn't even bring up the conversation to mention their faults and what they did. God had put it on my heart for me to express all my faults that contributed to how they moved. You understand what I'm saying? So you gotta allow yourself to be, corrected, let go of that like pride, and just really ask yourself, like, is it really like worth it? Some stuff just don't be worth it. And I feel like we engage in like power struggles, and I feel like that's something that we overcame in our friendship. Like some stuff, it's just like you don't always gotta get the last word. Some stuff after you talk about it, you don't gotta like bring it, back up. Like some stuff, it's okay to let it rest, right? Because if you keep a record of that person's like wrongdoing, that's not like love.
And it's not forgiving genuinely.
Yes.
Like, why are we still talking about something we already hashed out?
Yeah.
So, yeah, you definitely, on the head. And I'll also say, like, you'll know, like, the difference. Like, follow your intuition, like, follow your gut. Like, the person that's really going to fight for you, like, fight for it with you, that is a friendship worth keeping. Like we have talked about before, me and her used to have screaming matches. Screaming matches on the phone. Now, I wouldn't recommend it, but sometimes it happens. And if you're not on the phone at least screaming with me, I was like, you ain't trying with me. And we would be on the phone for hours, screaming,
I was overwhelmed,
crying. Like, and it would still be, and then it would still be like at the end of the phone call, I love you, talk, and it brought us closer, like every single time. So if a person is not trying to meet you halfway, or even trying to better the communication, however y'all gotta get there, do not water into somebody that's not watering into you, because that builds resentment as well. Like, you can only control your own actions, and you thinking that somebody should be doing what you should be doing, when really you could just remove yourself from the equation. So, heal it. We gotta stop allowing people to determine our worth and like how we are. And I don't care what the history is, how long y'all have been friends. We have been friends for like a long time, but that is because we determined a long time ago that we was gonna do it for ourselves and we was gonna do it for each other, and that it was worth doing. So, if you don't have somebody that's trying to like ride out for you like that, it's time to ride on it. Like, and that's how I feel. And you'll know it, and you'll feel it. And sometimes we already know.
We're just not ready to.
And just not ready to accept it. And that's one thing I will say, out of all the arguments and all the doubts that I had over the years, I never felt like at one point I was just like, we not gonna bring it back together. Even if we had to take space, distance, whatever, I knew we was gonna figure it out at some point, because we're watching each other grow as it's happening. Even though it's still things happening here and there, like you can tell when somebody's growing and trying to like change how y'all interact with each other. So if that's not happening, friendship, relationship, business, anything, you just need to remove yourself. And that's it.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing, when it comes to like growth, if you constantly growing and that person not growing, y'all gonna have to like separate. And, and this is not coming from like a judgmental like place, but after a while, we do need to take into consideration the type of people and the environments we allow ourselves to be surrounded, in and with and around, and all of those like good things. And so, if you are finding yourself every time you are hanging out with specific individuals and you are regressing rather than progressing, nonetheless, you do have that responsibility to demonstrate, self-control. But also, you don't have to put yourself in those positions to like test yourself or to even put things like at stake. And that's something that I have been doing since I have been intentional with my relationship with God. So if I feel like, okay, if I talk to this person too much, if I engage into this type of conversation, if I constantly find myself doing this activity, that activity, it's going to make me lose like focus. So of course, like I'm like doing the work within myself so I can still, have the fruit of the spirit of, self-control and be who God created me to be, because my convictions are my convictions. Their convictions are theirs. But still at the same time, although there's a difference in convictions, I still have to be mindful. So if you are in a place in which you are really, really trying to grow, you have to be mindful. And if there are people who try to make you feel bad or try to make your spiritual journey or like your journey of growth in general to make it seem like you are better than, or you're talking down on them, or like you acting brand new, you don't need those people in your life at all. Those are people who are literally hindering you from like your purpose and stuff like that, because if anything, they are going to uplift you and they are going to support you. So realize while you are in these long-term friendships, you're not going to be the same person who like you were when like you initially met, right? And so I'm not even the same person who I was 6 months ago. She's not even the same person who she was 6 months ago. Nonetheless, going back to that question, when in doubt, being able to have those conversations for that reassurance. But if you find yourself constantly having to tell people, oh no, I promise I'm not this type of person, I'm not that type of person, and then it's causing you to regress and for you to turn into like that people pleaser just to like persuade them that you haven't forgotten about them and things of that nature, that ain't nothing but the devil. That ain't nothing but the devil. Child, pretty much like plain and simple. So friends, grow together and understand that everyone comes into your life during like an appointed season and for like a reason, and you got to be able to pray to God for that wisdom and that discernment to figure out are they here for a season, what's the reason, is this a lifetime, or is this just a point of time, right? And so that's just what I wanted to leave y'all off with today. So I hope this episode treated everyone well. Do not forget to go ahead and comment, like, share, and subscribe. All that good stuff. And that's a wrap. Feel it.